Welcome to a walkthrough of the Illicit Discharge Detection and Elimination, or IDDE program requirements of the 2016 Massachusetts and 2017 New Hampshire Small Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, or MS4, permits. The Clean Water Act requires municipalities to prohibit non-stormwater discharges into storm sewers. MS4 permits require operators to implement a stormwater management program to reduce the discharge of pollutants to the maximum extent practicable, protect water quality, and meet the water quality requirements of the Clean Water Act. To do so, municipalities must create IDDE programs that focus on the detection and elimination of illicit discharges. Every municipality permitted to operate an MS4 must have an IDDE program in place. During this presentation, we'll use the term permit to refer to both the Massachusetts and New Hampshire versions of the new MS4 permits. All definitions used in these permits are set out in Appendix A, which can be accessed through your state's permit page on the EPA website links shown at the end of this presentation. You may find it helpful to have a hard copy of your permit on hand as we review program requirements. IDDE programs must include all the elements set out here. We'll discuss each one, starting with developing adequate legal authority as set out in Part 2.3.4a of your permit. What constitutes adequate legal authority? Municipalities must adopt bylaws, ordinances, or other regulatory mechanisms to address the sources of pollutants entering their MS4s. These mechanisms must also allow your town to enforce permit conditions when necessary. Municipalities must enact legal authority to prohibit illicit discharges, investigate suspected illicit discharges, eliminate illicit discharges, including discharges from properties not owned by or controlled by the MS4, and implement appropriate enforcement procedures and actions. You may have already enacted such an ordinance or bylaw as required by the 2003 permit. Newly designated municipalities must enact this legal authority within 3 years of their permit's effective date. As you can see, illicit discharge is the key term here. What is an illicit discharge? Federal regulations define this term as any discharge to an MS4 that is not composed entirely of stormwater, with some exceptions, such as discharges from NPDES-permitted industrial sources and discharges from firefighting activities, among others outlined in the regulations and the permit. Illicit discharges are considered illicit because MS4s are not designed to accept, process, or discharge non-stormwater wastes. These discharges can enter MS4s through direct connections, such as wastewater piping mistakenly or deliberately connected to storm drains, indirect connections, such as infiltration into MS4s from cracked sanitary systems, or directly to catch basins through spills or dumping, such as deliberate disposal of paint or used oil dumped into catch basins. The result? Untreated discharges that contribute high levels of pollutants, including heavy metals, toxics, oil and grease, solvents, nutrients, viruses, and bacteria to receiving water bodies. Pollutant levels from these illicit discharges have been shown to be high enough to significantly degrade receiving water quality and threaten aquatic, wildlife, and human health. Now that we understand what an illicit discharge is, let's apply it to drafting our ordinance. Ordinance and bylaw models are available to use as guides. Here's an example that can be downloaded from the EPA webpage, Stormwater Tools in New England. The URL is listed on our resource page. The next IDDE program requirement is drafting a written IDDE program document as set out in Part 2.3.4.6 of your permit. Let's review the requirements for this document. Your program document must be written in either hard copy or electronic form. It must include a reference or citation to your legal authority, identify the departments or offices responsible for specific program requirements, because program responsibilities are often shared among several departments, such as boards of health, public works and inspection services, and set out specific written procedures, including those for dry weather outfall screening and sampling, and catchment investigations, which we discuss in more detail later in this presentation. Your program document must be completed within 1 year of your permit's effective date and then updated in accordance with milestones set out in the permit. Please refer to Part 2.3.4.6 of your permit for a full description of written IDDE program plan requirements. Next, let's discuss the requirement that all illicit discharges must be eliminated as set out in Part 2.3.4.2. Upon detection of an illicit discharge, you must locate, identify, and eliminate it as expeditiously as possible. In addition, when applicable, you must notify all parties responsible for the illicit discharge and require them to eliminate it immediately. Actions to eliminate illicit discharges must be commenced immediately and pursued diligently. If elimination is not possible within 60 days of source identification, an elimination schedule must be established. Annual reports must include the date that each source was identified, the date of its elimination, or the schedule for its elimination. The period between identification of an illicit discharge and its elimination is not a grace period. Illicit discharges are unlawful until eliminated. Remember, permitted MS4 discharges mixed with illicit discharges are unlawful as well and must also be eliminated. Next, we'll talk about the requirement to eliminate illicit discharges caused by sanitary sewer overflows, or SSOs, as described in Part 2.3.4.4. A sanitary sewer overflow, or SSO, is an overflow, spill, diversion, or release of wastewater from a collection system to surface waters of the United States or to groundwater. SSOs can be caused by a variety of conditions, including blockages, sewer line breaks, and lapses in sewer system operation or maintenance. SSOs can spill raw sewage into basements or out of manholes into MS4s, and then, untreated, into surface waters. The raw sewage can carry bacteria, viruses, intestinal worms, molds, and fungi, which can cause diseases ranging from mild gastroenteritis to cholera, dysentery, and infectious hepatitis. When local water bodies can't be used for drinking water, fishing, or recreation, tourism income and waterfront property values may fall, fishing and shellfish harvesting may be restricted or halted, and beaches closed. SSOs that discharge to surface waters through an MS4 are considered illicit discharges and must be eliminated as quickly as possible. The IDDE program requires permittees with sanitary sewer collection systems to develop an inventory of known locations where SSOs have discharged to the MS4 within the previous 5 years. Your inventory must include the location of each SSO that has discharged to your MS4 within the previous 5 years, whether the SSO discharge entered a surface water directly or through an MS4 outfall, the date and time of each known occurrence, the estimated volume of each discharge, a description of each SSO event indicating its known or suspected cause, all completed mitigation and corrective measures, including dates of completion, and all planned mitigation and corrective measures with implementation schedules. This SSO inventory must be completed within 1 year of your permit's effective date. The inventory, including the status of all mitigation and corrective measures, must be updated in each annual report. Expeditious elimination means that you must take all interim actions necessary to minimize the discharge of pollutants to and from the MS4 as quickly as possible until the discharge is permanently eliminated. Interim actions could include notifying a property owner if a discharge originates on private property, containing the discharge and preventing it from entering your MS4, clearing a blockage if it's causing the discharge, and preventing the public from coming into contact with the discharge. Once a permittee becomes aware of an SSO discharge to its MS4, EPA must be notified verbally within 24 hours, and both EPA and your state regulatory agency must be notified in writing within 5 days. A single notification covering multiple permits can constitute compliance with this requirement. The links to EPA reporting requirements and your state's reporting requirements are on our resource page. Again, please remember that the period between detection and elimination of an SSO to your MS4 is not a grace period. Discharges from an MS4 mixed with an SSO remain unlawful until eliminated. Now, let's discuss the requirement that permittees develop a complete and accurate MS4 system map. The 2003 permit only required maps of outfalls and receiving waters. The new permits, however, require municipalities to map their entire MS4 infrastructure, the drainage area to each outfall, and any features that may increase the risk of illicit discharges. This updated system map will help you identify and locate key infrastructure components, conditions that influence proper system operation, and areas with the potential for illicit discharges. A good program starts with good mapping. Your map is a planning tool for IDDE program implementation. It will help you manage information about the system, identify and prioritize problem areas, efficiently target areas and assign resources, and track program implementation progress. A comprehensive infrastructure map is also the cornerstone of an asset management program that can help reduce O&M costs, reduce unplanned maintenance costs, extend asset life, and develop long-term plans that anticipate your system's financial needs. Let's take a closer look at these new mapping requirements as set out in Part 2.3.4.5. The requirements for developing your system map are set out in 2 phases. At the end of Phase 1, your system map must include the locations of all outfalls and the receiving waters, all open channel conveyances, such as swales and ditches, interconnections with other MS4s and storm sewer systems, for instance, where stormwater infrastructure such as pipes or other conveyances cross town boundaries, municipally owned stormwater treatment structures such as bioretention areas and detention basins, water bodies identified by name and all use impairments, and initial catchment delineations based on available data. Phase 1 must be completed within 2 years from the effective date of the permit. Phase 2 mapping must be completed within 10 years from the effective date of the permit. Your Phase 2 map must additionally include the latitude and longitude of all outfall spatial locations with a minimum accuracy of plus or minus 30 feet, the location of all pipes, manholes, and catch basins, refined catchment delineations that reflect information collected during catchment investigations, a municipal sanitary sewer system map, if available, and a municipal combined sewer system map, if applicable. The permit also recommends additional elements you may choose to add to your map. Examples include the material size and age of storm sewer and sanitary sewer pipes, and the location of past illicit discharge investigations. These elements are recommended, but not required. Refer to Appendix A for definitions of all these terms. Keep in mind that data layers and other mapping resources are available from state agencies, many regional planning commissions, and EPA to assist you in making your map updates. Finally, remember to update your system map annually as new information becomes available. Permittees must submit a progress report on the completion of their system map in each annual report. A Geographic Information System, or GIS, is a valuable tool for gathering, depicting, and analyzing mapping data. This GIS map segment clearly shows catch basins and stormwater pipes draining to an outfall. Maps can be in either hard copy or electronic format. However you choose to produce your map, it must be drawn to a scale that will allow you, EPA, and your state agency to readily understand your system. Next, Let's review the requirements to assess and priority rank outfalls and interconnections, as described in Part 2.3.4.7. Assessing the condition of all outfalls and interconnections will allow you to prioritize investigations based on an outfall's public health significance and illicit discharge potential. To do so, you must create an inventory of all outfalls and interconnections, including their location and condition. This inventory creates the framework you will use to rank outfalls and interconnections, track inspections and screenings, and list other IDDE program information. Ranking is a two-step process. Your initial ranking is based on existing information and must be completed within 1 year of the permit's effective date. The initial rankings will be used to prioritize outfalls for dry weather screening. Follow-up ranking will be based on the results of dry weather screening. The follow-up ranking will then be used to prioritize your outfalls and schedule them for further investigation. Follow-up ranking must be completed within 3 years of the effective date of your permit. Your inventory must then be updated annually, based on any data collected during future dry weather screening events or other inspections. Remember to include your updated inventory and rankings in each annual report. EPA has developed a set of categories that you can use to rank your outfalls and interconnections. Problem outfalls are those with known or suspected contributions of illicit discharges, including outfalls where previous screening indicates likely sewer input. The permit includes a list of indicators as a footnote in Part 2.3.4.7 that will help you identify outfalls with likely sewer input. High priority outfalls discharge to an area of concern, such as a public beach, recreational area, drinking water supply, or shellfish bed. An outfall may also be designated as high priority based on permit-specified characteristics that we'll discuss in a moment. Low priority outfalls are those determined to be low priorities based on the same permit-specific characteristics. And finally, excluded outfalls and interconnections are those that pose no illicit discharge potential and can be excluded from program requirements. An example of an excluded outfall is a roadway drainage outfall discharging to an undeveloped area with no dwellings or sanitary sewers. Other examples are listed in Part 2.3.4.7. Let's take a look at the permit-specified characteristics and how they help you with ranking. Permit-specified characteristics predict an outfall's potential for illicit discharge. They'll help you distinguish among outfalls and catchment areas, determine the likelihood of illicit discharges in each catchment, and establish investigation priorities. Permit-specified characteristics include past discharge complaints and reports, poor receiving water quality, the density of generating sites, such as car dealer lots, car washes, gas stations, garden centers, and industrial manufacturing areas that could release pollutants contributing to illicit discharges, the age of developments and their associated infrastructure, for instance, industrial areas and sanitary sewer systems that are more than 40 years old, areas once serviced by septic systems or a combined system, residential land use areas serviced by septic systems 30 years old or older, any river or stream culverted for distances greater than the length of a simple roadway crossing, and where there's a potential for an illicit discharge of a pollutant of concern to an impaired water body, identified on your state's Clean Water Act 303D list. Permittees should consider each of these characteristics. However, you're not required to use all of them. Also, municipalities may add additional characteristics based on their unique circumstances. Remember to identify the specific characteristics you do use in your written program document. Outfalls or interconnections initially ranked as high or low priority must be screened for dry weather flow. The information collected during dry weather screening and sampling will be used to assess the overall condition of your stormwater system, determine locations where illicit inputs are obvious, and prioritize outfalls for further investigation. Your program document must include procedures for conducting this dry weather screening and sampling, including protocols for the use of field kits, sample collection, storage, and handling, and the collection and storage of field data. These written procedures must be included in your program document within 1 year of the permit's effective date. The dry weather screening must be completed within 3 years of the effective date of your permit. Dry weather screening and sampling can proceed only when no more than 1/10 of an inch of rain has fallen in a previous 24-hour period and when no significant snowmelt is occurring. Finally, refer to Part 2.3.4.7 for a complete list of dry weather screening requirements, which includes information on data that must be recorded and screening and sampling procedures. When dry weather flow is detected at an outfall or interconnection, you must collect samples that must be analyzed for a variety of parameters. Please refer to Part 2.3.4.7 for full details. You will use the results of your dry weather screening and sampling to reprioritize system outfalls and interconnections in your inventory. These follow-up rankings will be the most significant factor used to prioritize catchment investigations and should be updated as additional dry weather screening information becomes available. All dry weather screening data must be submitted in your annual reports. Here is an outfall inventory template that can be downloaded from the EPA Stormwater Tools in New England webpage and used to input outfall screening data and rank outfalls. Different colors are used to differentiate between outfall priority categories. Problem outfalls are shown in red. High priority outfalls are shown in blue. Low priority are shown in white, and excluded outfalls are shown in green. Outfalls and interconnections indicating sewer input must be ranked as the highest priority. This template can be used for reporting purposes by submitting it with your annual report. However, this template is just a tool, and its use is not mandatory. These outfall rankings can now be used to target catchment areas for priority investigation. Catchment investigations are performed to locate and eliminate illicit discharges. Locating illicit discharges requires the systematic and progressive investigation of each catchment area draining to an outfall in order to isolate the source of an illicit discharge. Requirements for catchment investigations are set out in Part 2.3.4.8. Before going further, let's define the term catchment area. An outfall catchment, depicted as the shaded area in this map, is the land area draining to a single outfall or interconnection. All catchments must be investigated by the end of the 10-year permit term. The only exceptions are for catchments draining to an excluded outfall. Written catchment investigation procedures must be developed. These written procedures must identify the maps, historic plans, records, and other sources you will review to identify catchment areas with a higher likelihood of an illicit connection or wet weather discharge. Include a manhole inspection methodology for conducting both dry and wet weather investigations, and establish how you will isolate and confirm sources of illicit discharges. These procedures must be written within 18 months of the permit's effective date. Please refer to Part 2.3.4.8 for more information on these requirements. System vulnerability factors, or SVFs, help you to identify catchments with a higher likelihood of illicit connections or wet weather discharges. Make sure to identify and record the presence of any of the following SVFs: a history of SSOs, common or twin invert manholes serving storm and sanitary sewer alignments, common trench construction serving both storm and sanitary sewer alignments, crossings of storm and sanitary sewer alignments where the sanitary system is shallower than the storm drain system, inadequate sanitary sewer level of service resulting in regular surcharging, customer backups, or frequent customer complaints, areas formerly served by combined sewer systems, and sanitary sewer infrastructure defects such as leaking service laterals, cracked, broken, or offset infrastructure, and other problems as listed in your permit. The permit includes, in Part 2.3.4.8, a recommended list of additional SVFs you may choose to add to your list. When at least one SVF is identified in a catchment, wet weather screening and sampling is required. Make sure to document the presence or absence of SVFs for each catchment in your annual report. Now, let's take a look at the catchment investigation timeline. Investigations of catchments with problem outfalls must begin within 2 years of the permit's effective date and completed within 7 years of the permit's effective date. Investigations of catchments where dry weather screening identifies likely sewer input must be completed within 7 years of the permit's effective date, and investigation of catchments with problem, high priority, or low priority outfalls must be completed within 10 years of the permit's effective date. Catchment investigations must proceed until the location of a suspected illicit discharge, or SSO, can be isolated to a pipe segment between 2 manholes and the source of the illicit discharge is identified. For outfalls that contained evidence of an illicit discharge, catchment investigations will be considered complete upon confirmation of all illicit source locations. Use the methods set out in your written procedures to show structural damage, inflow, or illegal connections, which will help isolate and confirm the sources of illicit discharges. These may include video inspections, dye testing, and smoke testing. If no evidence of an illicit discharge is found, catchment investigations will be considered complete upon completion of key junction manhole sampling. Please see Part 2.3.4.8 for all specific catchment investigation requirements. As noted previously, wet weather screening must be conducted when at least one system vulnerability factor has been identified in a catchment. Wet weather screening will help identify illicit discharges triggered by precipitation or a high water table and not carried through storm drain systems in dry weather. Investigations of these catchments are not complete until wet weather screening and sampling have been performed. For more detailed information on wet weather screening requirements, please refer to Part 2.3.4.8. You must update your maps, catchment delineations, and inventory of SVFs with the information gathered during catchment investigations. New data collected during dry and wet weather screenings must be submitted in each annual report. Once an illicit discharge is removed, confirmatory screening must be conducted within 1 year of its removal from the catchment area. This confirmatory screening must be conducted in dry weather. However, if SVFs have been identified in the catchment area, both dry weather and wet weather confirmatory screening must be conducted. If confirmatory screening continues to indicate evidence of an illicit discharge, the catchment must be scheduled for further investigation. The period between identification and elimination of an illicit discharge is not a grace period. MS4 discharges that are mixed with an illicit discharge are not authorized by your permit and are unlawful until eliminated. After catchment investigations are complete and all illicit discharges eliminated, you must reprioritize each outfall and interconnection for future screening events. Ongoing screening must then be performed every 5 years. All results must be included in your annual reports. Now, let's move on to tracking program progress requirements. Permittees must track IDDE implementation and evaluate program effectiveness as required in Part 2.3.4.9. To do so, use the following indicators: the number of SSOs and illicit discharges identified and removed, the number and percent of outfall catchments evaluated using catchment investigation procedures, dry and wet weather screening and sampling results, and the estimated volume of sewage removed. All this information must be included in your annual reports. Finally, permittees must train employees involved in IDDE program implementation as described in Part 2.2.4.11. Training must occur, at least annually, include a review of IDDE program elements, and teach employees how to recognize illicit discharges and SSOs. Permittees must describe the frequency and type of training provided in each annual report. This completes our walkthrough of IDDE program requirements. Use the websites shown here to access the permits and a variety of materials from EPA, state regulatory agencies, and other organizations. EPA also posts updated permit-related information on these websites, as well as notifications of upcoming training events. Please check these sites periodically for up-to-date information. If you have further questions, or would like more information about IDDE or other permit-related assistance and training resources, the permit contacts from EPA, Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, and the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services are listed here and on the EPA permit websites. Thank you for your time and attention.